Welcome back. As you may or may not know, I'm known as Eli, the computer guy. My current project is something called Silicon at Dojo.com. Basically, the idea is what if high quality technology education was simply as accessible as running water? You can go to silicondojo.com. We have self study programs there, a 48 part Python series, SQL, structured query language, the Bottle Web App framework. I'm finishing up something called Moon Dream AI. All of those classes are there completely free. You can simply go there, you can access them, and you can learn so that you can empower yourself to do whatever it is you want to do. We have Zoom classes, we do interviews, we also do one-on-one sessions. We're basically every Monday between 1 to 5 p.m. I sit down on Zoom and I talk with people all around the world and I try to help them. Again, basically think about it like coaching sessions for their career, businesses, and that type of thing. And that is why I'm doing these videos now, is I get a lot of the same types of questions when I do those one-on-one meetings, when I answer my students' questions, and so I figured I'd do videos to try to explain at least my worldview. I'll put it out there. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying I'm wrong either. This is what I think, having been in the tech world since 1996. So anyways, how do you like the light? So we got the audio. The audio is a little bit better now. We have the Rode Wireless Pro audio, trying to improve my audio. And now I have a ring light. I have like the Lume Cube Pro light to try to improve lighting. Look, I can make it brighter. Can I make it bright? Oh, come on. I can make it brighter. Oh, look at that. Oh, geez, that's horrible. Anyways, I can make it more white. I can make it more white or more brown. Anyways, got that. Again, look at the bright side of the insane tariffs that we have going on right now. It got me to buy some better hardware before all of this becomes too expensive. I bought the wireless mic and the Lume Cube when I thought tariffs were going to be at like 54%, something like that. And now tariffs are going to be at 104%. I don't even know. I don't like. What is my honest opinion? I want to go in a corner and vomit right now. That's my honest opinion. What is my honest opinion? I did not think the President of the United States had this much power to do something so asininely stupid. But apparently he does, because the Republicans in Congress aren't doing a good darn thing, and the Democrats, I don't know. I guess when they tried to resist in the first Trump term, it was just too tiring and too exhausted. So the Democrats are off taking a nap. So this is what we get. This is what we get. We get 104%. And you know, it might actually be more than 104% tariffs with anything coming in from China. I've been looking at it, and depending on the math, it might all be all the way up to like something like 135% tariffs. That's one of the things to think about with tariffs. And tariffs is going to be very confusing to figure out what the price of things are. There's all kinds of stuff that go into the tariffs, right? So if a complete product comes into the United States, right, that's going to be at one tariff rate. If components that come in from other countries come into a product that gets assembled in the United States, that will have an effect on tariffs, or on basically what you're paying. What the markup price was. Again, something to think about is, back when I had my computer repair company, right, my MSP, I suppose you could call it, we would buy essentially white box items, so surveillance cameras, other things like that were not very easy to procure 15 years ago, and we had insane markups. Again, one of the things I will tell you is nobody wants to pay a lot for labor, but they will pay a lot for hardware. Again, that's one of the things. Like I found this out. Like when you're creating estimates for projects, right? So if you're honest, right, when you create an estimate for a project, what you would do is you would say it's $8,000 in labor and $2,000 in hardware. right? Because that's about what it is, right? You're buying all this hardware. That's probably with a 25% markup or whatever. You know, I buy the hardware for $1,500. You know, you got to deal with RMAs. You got to make sure the equipment works right. You got to take it in. You got to deliver it, right? So you make 500 bucks. Fine, right? That's not too bad, but it makes a lot of sense. So $8,000 in labor, $200 in, or $2,000 in hardware. That's what the project should be built out as. But if you give that to the customer, they will lose their good goddamn mind. You want me to pay you $8,000 in labor? That's ridiculous. So here's a funny thing. How the real world works. What you do, you take that same $10,000 proposal, you charge $8,000 in hardware and $2,000 in labor. Yeah, sure, whatever. There you go. Oh, that's so reasonable, Eli. I can't believe the price of this project is so low. Right? There's a weird thing in our society. People will pay a lot for hardware. Again, not necessarily for labor. So let's say I was selling a $500 camera. So go back in the day, I'm selling a $500 camera. My cost is 50 bucks. Yeah, what? Anyways, so I get that in, and let's say we have 100% tariff on that. So I'm bringing it in at $50. It's now costing me $100. So instead of getting a $450 profit on that part, I'm now getting a $400 profit on that part. Well, here's the thing. This is where we talk about. This is where we talk about the whole question of tariffs. Do the stores, do the vendors eat the cost of the tariff, or is the tariff cost passed on to the customer? And so that would be something that I would have to think about a lot. Right? Right? I'm losing $50 per camera now selling because of this. So instead of charging $500, do I charge $550? I don't know. Do I charge $525? Do I charge $510? Do I charge $505? Or maybe I just charge $500. Right? And that's one of those things, eye of the beholder. How do businesses decide things like prices? Again, you would like to believe it is far more scientific than it is. Realistically, like, let's see what the customer is willing to pay. Yeah, I can sell you these cameras for $500. Oh, okay, that sounds reasonable. Really? Okay. Anyways, so you can eat that, you might not eat that, whatever. Here's the thing, in the modern world, again, I'm talking about that 15 years ago. So to get surveillance cameras, I actually had to have a distributor back then. I had to go through a whole process, whole rigmarole. Again, now you can go onto Amazon or wherever else and get surveillance cameras. So obviously, you're not making $450 for selling a $50 surveillance camera anymore. Anyways, but the interesting question then becomes is what are the margins now? Again, the difference between the cost the vendor buys it for and the cost they sell it for, for then how will the tariffs affect you, right? So if it's a $500 camera, again, I'm buying it for 50 bucks, then I can eat that cost. On the other hand, if it's a $500 camera and I'm buying it for $450, now my cost, right, the taxes, I'm paying for over $450 per camera in taxes now, Trump's taxes, because nothing brings down inflation like ridiculous taxes. So now it's costing me $900. That's just my cost. And so that's the issue, is then I can't eat that. I can't buy a $900 widget and sell it for $500. I can't lose $400 per widget. It's just not gonna happen, right? But then the question that becomes, okay, so if it's now costing me $900, do I sell it for $950? And again, how many customers am I gonna lose, right? If I had customers that will only buy this thing for $500, are they going to be willing to spend $950 for it? And so that's one of the reasons we get into this weird thing with these tariffs, is we're really not sure how it's going to affect a lot of prices, because for a lot of things that we purchase, there actually isn't a lot of price transparency to understand the difference between what the vendor is paying and what we end up paying, what the markup costs and all that kind of stuff are. So it'll be curious to see how that works out at the end of the day. But the issue that we have going on right now is most of the items that we purchase, right, almost everything that we purchase in the United States, good or bad, comes from China. Some part or another of it is made in China, right? Made in China, made in China, made in China. Components are made in China and assembled somewhere else, the whole 9 yards, right? And so the cost, because of Trump's taxes, right? This is a massive, insane tax increase on every single American that we are paying. China ain't paying these taxes. Mexico ain't paying these taxes. We are paying these taxes. We are getting robbed by the Trump administration. And we're supposed to have a smile on our face when they rob us of taxes, right? Isn't taxation theft? Isn't that what the folks were saying? And now we're supposed to be happy about this massive level of theft. But anyways, right, so just a massive amount of taxation that's going to increase the cost of absolutely everything. Again, if we look at these Rode wireless microphone things here, it cost me about $300. Right? Again, not too bad, a little more than I'd honestly want to pay, but you guys have been complaining about my audio for a long time. Anyways, might as well try to improve it. $300 isn't so horrible. And again, I want to start doing interviews and things. My wife and I, we're most likely going to start doing the digital nomad deal. I want to start going to areas, interviewing different people, that type of deal. And the cool part with this system is it comes with 2 microphones. But think about it. Think about it. When it goes for $300, $300. Now imagine it was $600, $300 in taxes, $300 in taxes. And the curious part about that too is you notice the things nobody talks about, such as the increase in sales tax. So here's some weird math for you. Do you realize the sales tax on a $300 item is less than the sales tax on a $600 item? It's strange. But if an item goes from $300 to $600, because the government is taxing the ever-loving crap out of it, you're also paying twice as much in sales tax. Did you ever think about that one? Nobody's talking about reducing sales tax because the price of everything is about to go through the damn roof because of forced tariffing by the government. But anyways, think about that. Think about if that went from $300, which is kind of pricey, to $600. Again, this Loom Cube thing costs $200 some odd. I think that went from $200 to again, $400 or $500. Again, you think about Mac computers, laptop computers. I bought this yesterday actually from Best Buy, so I could use this on the iPad Pro, so we can do some things with classes, basically a digital whiteboard. And I went there, and again, you're looking at all these laptops there. Those laptops are now, currently $1,000, somewhere between $600 to $2,000. Now imagine those laptops being somewhere between $1,200 to $4,000. What happens to the business environment when prices are jacked up to that degree? And the thing that I want you to be thinking about, again, hopefully for my students, hopefully for the people that are watching these videos, is it's not about the crime. It's not about the crime. Is Trump a colossal jackass that's probably going to have to destroy our country? Yes. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. But crying about it isn't going to do a good goddamn thing, is it? Crying about Trump is not going to feed your kids. Crying about Trump is not going to get your mortgage paid. Crying about Trump isn't going to do many things, right? We can vote in slightly less than 4 years. In slightly less than 2 years, we can try to vote for Congress. I'm not sure that's going to do anything. In slightly less than 4 years, we can vote for president. Until then, we're on this ride. And so one of the questions we have to ask ourselves is, while we're on this ride, what can we do in this particular business environment? What actions are available to us in order to try to get paid? Again, how do we have agency in our own lives and in the future? And I think what's kind of interesting to be thinking about with this disaster of the Trump policy is it might actually bring back things like repairing equipment, right? Because that's one of the issues that's been going on for about the past 15 years, again, with importing stuff out of China, is that the cost of new products is so low that the value of repairing old products basically goes out the window. Right, you think about this. If you're going to be hiring a skilled technician, they should get paid approximately $100 an hour. Right? That's just, when you look at the bills and taxes and all that kind of stuff. Basically, if you're a consultant or if you're a skilled repair person out on your own, you need to be making at least $100 an hour. So if you have a widget that breaks, it's going to cost at least $100 to repair that widget, plus, whatever for the hardware or whatever else, so maybe $200. And so one of the interesting things, over the past 15 years is the price of new goods has continuously gone down to such a degree. If I look at it and I say, well, I've got this computer, it's going to cost me at least $200 to repair, maybe $300 to repair, when I could buy a new widget for $500 or $600, right? I would rather have the new widget. Why? Because when I get a new widget, I know it's new, right? If I repair an old widget, well, the thing that was wrong got fixed, but there might also be other problems there. Again, I don't want to spend $300 today and $300 tomorrow and $300 the day after. All right, I don't want to pay that. I buy something new, then it's new, for whatever good that is. It'll have all the new bells and whistles. It'll be the right color. Again, Marquez Brownlee, whenever a new Mac comes out, he just won't shut up about the colors, because apparently colors matter when you're running AI models. If you run an AI model on anything other than a space black MacBook Pro, it just, it'll lose efficiency or something, right? So anyways, that's one of the big things, right? And that was one of the things that helped kill a lot of the computer repair companies. Again, back in the, somewhere between 1995 to 2010, being in the computer repair industry was a very valuable thing, right? You could go in there, you could upgrade hard drives, you could upgrade RAM, you could clear out viruses, you could do all this repair work, and people just basically kept throwing money at you. It got to a certain point, though, that a lot of this hardware simply became replaceable. And so people just literally stopped repairing. Again, think about it with things like iPhones or any of these smartphones. Most of these smartphones, when people replace smartphones anymore, they don't even replace them because they're even broken. They might be working perfectly fine. They bought them 3 years ago. A 3-year-old smartphone, right? It's getting swapped for the latest and greatest smartphone. Why? Because it's the latest and greatest and because they can afford it. But think about it, right? So if an iPhone is $1,000, and people are just swapping them because they can, what happens when the iPhone goes to being $2,000? Are people going to have the money to be able to afford these products now that the tariffs are here? Again, there's a difference between like luxury buying, status buying, and products simply being out of reach, right? If you buy a Mac, you can say, oh, look, he's buying a Mac because this is supposed to be a status symbol. And a $3,000 status symbol may or may not be a $3,000 status symbol. But if it's $6,000, how many people can even afford that particular status symbol? On top of that, if we think about what's going on with the economy, again, so we have 105% tariffs against China at this point, and China's not backing down, which makes a lot of sense. As an American, I'll tell China, you go, girl. You don't back down. Right? They're not backing down. So they just added 84% tariffs against us. So not only are the prices of everything in the technology world going to go through the roof. Think about this. If you have been a technology professional for the past 20 years, you're used to relatively inexpensive technology, right? Again, like server, it was normal for servers to cost $5,000 to $10,000. Any fucking server to cost $5,000 or $10,000 over 20 years ago. A desktop computer was $2,000. And again, you think about, when I say $2,000, realize that's $2,000 in 2000 money. So that's the equivalent of like $3,000 or $4,000 today. Think about how expensive hardware was back in the 2000 to 2005 era, and think about how the cost for all of that has plummeted so much in the past 20 years. And now the cost for all of those items is going to be is being massively artificially inflated because of these tariffs. And then think about what's going to be happening with the economy. Again, as many businesses try to figure out what to do, and many of them can't figure out what to do. What's curious, with all the politicians at this point, which is weird. Again, like when the Democrats do it, when the progressives say insurance will pay for it, I mean, it's stupid, but, oh, you know, I guess everybody has their focus. But the funny part is, you hear the Republicans now, or hear the Republicans, and they're saying, well, that's a CEO's job. A CEO's job is to figure out how to deal with the insanity of the current administration. All right, so all of a sudden, prices for all of these inputs are going through the roof. And you know, the thing that I'll always argue in all of my videos is we need to treat people like people. The homeless person, we need to treat them like a person. And as a society, we need to figure out how we can do better for that homeless person. A mother, you know, bringing up a kid, we need to treat her like a human. Black people, we need to treat them like people. And you know who else we need to treat like actual human beings? CEOs. CEOs. I imagine a time when we treat CEOs like actual human beings that sometimes don't know what the hell the answer is. And so you have a whole bunch of business owners right now and CEOs right now who the cost for their inputs have literally been doubled overnight, and they don't know what the hell to do. And a lot of them are not going to be able to figure out the particular answer to keep them in business. So we have a world where the hardware cost is going through the roof and the economy is going off the damn cliff, and you're a technology professional. And so this is something that you need to be thinking about for when you're designing your architectures and when you're thinking about the services that you're going to be offering your customers. Again, it's things like, is it worthwhile to repair equipment? Right? Because again, 10, 15 years, 20 years, if something broke, just buy a new one. Right? We're to the point now that a lot of people simply will not be able to afford to quote unquote just buy a new one. And so as a business owner, as a decision maker, one of the things to think about is what part of that market can you try to gain access to so that you can make money. Again, Louis Rossmann, frenemy of this show, Louis Rossmann, right? Made a lot of money for many years repairing Macs, right? So a Mac dies, costs $3,000. They go to the Apple Genius Bar. They're told it'll cost $2,000 to repair their Mac, and so they end up going to Louis Rossmann. He spends 15 minutes, swaps a chip, charges them $400 or $500. So one of the things to be considering right now is things like what what hardware is practical for you to be able to repair, right? If you're getting in laptops or if you're getting in desktop computers, that type of thing, what do you have the capability to actually figure out how to be able to repair and how to be able to make some money on, right? That's something to think about. I was watching F-stoppers. So there's a show for people who take pictures, photographers, right? It's called F-stoppers on YouTube. One of the interesting things that they were talking about is maybe that it's the time for photographers to start renting equipment. So one of the arguments that they made, right, again, a lot with inexpensive hardware, that a lot of photographers out there like to go out and simply buy their own equipment, right? I'm going to go buy my camera, I'm going to buy my lenses, and the camera costs $1,000, lenses cost a couple $1,000. I'm a professional, no big deal. Well, when the camera is now costing, goes from $1,000 to over $2,000, and lenses go from $3,000 to over $6,000. All of a sudden, that math changes. One of the arguments that they made is that you can rent photography equipment now online. And so for a lot of the professional photographers to really think about, instead of buying equipment, simply renting it for the client when you have the client's work, and then charging the client for the cameras and things. Instead of it simply being wrapped up as a single thing in your bill, you now break out. The photographer's cost is X for taking the pictures, the photographer's cost is Y for cleaning up the pictures, editing the pictures, and those types of things, and the equipment cost is Z. Right? I think that's one of the things to consider. Again, when I talk about project billing, again, I know a lot of the 18-year-olds. I know a lot of the socialists out there. They scream and they yell. Eli, I can't believe you would do that. You would change how you label the pricing. Instead of $2,000 for hardware and $8,000 for labor, you would do $8,000 for hardware and $2,000 for labor. But one of the important things to understand is when you're selling, right, the solution to the customers, literally how you write the bill really determines, or the estimate determines, how willing the customer is to pay the exact same amount of money. Right? So one of the things, like if you're a photographer and you're going, and it's like, this project will cost $5,000. They're like, I don't want to pay you $5,000. And then you write it out, and you're like, look. It's $1,000 for me to show. So I'm going to show up, I'm going to do a whole day's of work, blah, blah, blah. That's going to be $1,000. Oh wait, well once I get all of that, it's going to be a few days of work in order to do the editing, the cleanup, all that kind of stuff, and that's going to be $1,500. And then the hardware, right, renting the equipment is going to be an additional $2,500. Oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense. Don't want to pay for your labor more than we pay for the hardware. Right, something to consider. Something to think about, again, F-stoppers brought up that I thought was kind of interesting, where with some of the professional photographers, they actually charge rental fees for the cameras that they own. So when they need cameras or lenses that they don't have, they obviously charge the fees, right? But the interesting thing is basically they kind of break their company apart. So they have the labor company on this side and the hardware company on this side, so that they charge for labor, but then they also charge market rates for renting the cameras essentially from themselves in order to do the job, right? And it's one way to try to make those estimates and try to make those bills look sensible to their customers, and so that they can actually get paid enough to be able to do fancy things like pay the mortgage and all that kind of thing. And so I think this is going to be a curious thing, like going forward, is like thinking about running businesses and building your architecture and building your systems in insane tariff environments. Because this is going to get better. Again, because China's not going to back down. And I'll say it as an American, China shouldn't back down. China should tell us to go to effing hell, right? As an American, I say, go China, boy, go. Tell us to fuck off. So we have our president who basically wants to be the big man, wants to play at being the big man. Anybody that doesn't get on their knees and beg for his forgiveness, he wants to punish. And you're going to start looking around the rest of the world, and the rest of the world doesn't necessarily want to play this game. Again, all leaders have constituents, right? Xi has constituents. Macron has constituents. All these people have constituents. And again, are there populations going to find it amusing when their leaders go groveling to the president of the United States? And again, groveling. And it's important to really viscerally grasp this concept, right? The United States, again, have we been running things? Maybe we have, poorly. Anyways, we've been the center of a lot of things since 1945 after World War II. And again, a lot of people around the world don't necessarily like it. A lot of them really don't like it. Again, it's feeling like you maybe had a countdown. Oh, you got to deal with the stupidity of the Americans. But for dealing with the stupidity of the Americans, you get a little of this, you get a little of that, you get some of the other things. At the end of the day, be polite to them, right? The Americans might be some arrogant a-holes, but you say good morning, you say good night, you do, you chit-chat a little bit. Everything's pretty good. Everything's pretty good, right? They put money into the church. They help fund the new football field or whatever for the high school, right? They might be arrogant asses, but at the end of the day, they do a decent amount for the global community. We can deal with that. Again, look at it now though. We've gone from being arrogant assholes to whatever this is. It's not about it's not about them being polite. It's not about them niceties and that type of thing. It's about them groveling. If you're not groveling on your knees, begging for salvation from us, we will try to destroy you. Again, now to be clear, I'm not French. I'll admit it. I'm not French. I'm not German. I'm not Chinese. I'm just American. But damn, I gotta say, if I was an American, somebody's pulling that crap against the U.S., I don't think I want a good goddamn thing to do with those bastards. And so a curious thing, again, with the whole tariffs, is what happens if the politicians don't feel like they can back down? Again, the whole thing with chicken, the whole thing with playing the game chicken. What if neither side veers away? Both sides die horrible, god-awful deaths, regardless of who started it. And so we've got over 100% tariffs against China. They have 84% tariffs against us. Again, tariffs against Europe, tariffs against all these other countries. Again, so many tariffs out there, right? You got the base level tariffs, then you got the extended tariffs, then you have the if you do business with Venezuela tariffs, right? Because that's the whole thing. Like he's just using tariffs for everything, right? Right? Remember, there was a flight of illegal immigrants that are going to get repatriated back to Colombia. Colombia refused the aircraft into their airspace, and then all of a sudden, Trump was like 25% tariffs. You're like, what? Again, Venezuela. We don't like Venezuela. Anybody who does business with Venezuela, 25% tariffs. What? Oh, you looked at us the wrong way. 35% tariffs on you. That's right. We are going to show the world what's what by taxing the ever-loving hell out of the American citizen. We are going to keep whipping the American citizen until you stop doing what we want you to do. We don't want you to do. And so it becomes that curious question of like, what does that business look like? Again, you think about that like with COVID, right? When COVID hit and so much stuff went virtual. Like why rent office space if you're not going to be able to meet in the office space anyway? So everybody starts using Zoom. But again, think about the domino effects here. Everybody starts using Zoom, and then all of a sudden you start having the mayors. You start having the mayors in the Democratic city is crying. They're crying. What happened to our tax money? Because now that people aren't coming into the office, well, then they're not going to the coffee shops, and they're not going to the local restaurants, and they're not going to all the stores and businesses that were in these business areas that were there to support the office-based workforce. Think about how that dramatically changes things. So anyways, I don't know. Maybe Trump at the end of the day will be the biggest proponent for right to repair. Maybe someday Lewis, 20, 30 years from now, Lewis will be looking back and say, I thought we were losing the right to repair war. But then Trump came in and he made new equipment so damn expensive. People decided to learn how to solder. But the other thing I wonder about that with though is how long will it take to upskill the workforce? So again, with Lewis Rossman and I have gone back and forth, right? I gave him advice back in 2012, and we've had conversations and snit fest and the rest ever since. But one of the things I always brought up to him is the whole idea of scaling, right? Because I talked about that one, closing down my business in 2009, fully closed it down in 2012. And one of the arguments that I made was, repairing computers was simply just not a valuable skill set anymore. You're not going to make $50 for sliding in a RAM chip, that kind of thing. And he said, and his people said, au contraire, Eli, au contraire. Right? He makes $400. He makes $400 for 15 minutes worth of work, apparently. Right? So a Mac dies, some little chip on there. He cracks it open. He finds where the chip is. He uses his heat gun, pulls the old chip off, puts a new chip on, goes through the post procedures and power on self-test procedures, makes sure everything works, and he makes $400 for 15 minutes worth of work. The curious thing that I always brought up to him, though, I'm not sure how well it did or did not get solved, is I always asked him, how easy is that to scale? And I think that's going to be the interesting thing with what happens to the American industry over the next couple of years with this insanity, is how scalable is it? Right, so when I had my computer repair store, right, I could bring in an intern, and I could show that intern how to swap RAM, right? Of course, right? I could show that intern how to put in a new hard drive. I could show that intern how to put a new graphics card. I could show a new intern how to troubleshoot and diagnose a computer and the whole 9 yards. Again, if you know anything about computers, especially how computers were 15 years ago, right, all that, again, the more experience you have, the better. It does take time. There is a learning curve, right? Learn your A+ or whatever. But, right, yeah, okay, not a big deal. And if they do something stupid, because you know they're going to do something stupid, because if there's one thing we all know about employees, is that they will find new and shocking ways to do stupid crap. But anyways, right? Oh, what's the worst that's gotta happen? If they don't seat that RAM stick properly, you just gotta pop the thing open. You gotta reseat it. You gotta apologize to the customer. So sorry, customer. Click, click, boom. There you go. I'm sorry. $25 off your next repair. Right? Again, they bring back in a computer. The virus wasn't actually removed. We thought it wasn't actually removed. I'm so sorry. We'll put this the first on the bench. We'll get this done as quickly as possible. Right? So again, with scaling old school computer repair work, It's relatively easy, skill set with a low risk for anything going too horribly wrong. Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. When you take a Mac, when you take a $3,000 computer, and you crack open a $3,000 computer, and then you pull out a heat gun to point in that $3,000 computer. Yeah. One, it takes a lot more to be able to upskill technicians to be able to be fully qualified to do those repairs, right? How long does it? So you say it takes 15 minutes to do a $400 repair. How long did it take you to learn how to do that repair in 15 minutes? And how long were you doing that repair before you got it down to you're pretty damn confident you're not going to run into any issues? Right? That's one of the things that people don't talk about. Again, why do you hire a CCIE for $500 an hour when they can solve your problems in 30 minutes? Why am I spending $500 for 30 minutes worth of work? Because it took them, 6 years to get the experience and knowledge to be able to solve your problem in 30 minutes. If you want to take 6 years to figure out how to solve the problem, you go for it, right? But anyways, how long does that take? And then you think again with employees. And again, employees are going to find new and creative ways to do asinine, stupid stuff because it's what they do. It's what they were put on this planet to do. Anyways, you have the employee and they have the heat gun. How confident are you that they're just not going to melt something else? Oh, yeah, they got rid of the solder in the place they were supposed to get rid of the solder. And they decided to get rid of a little bit more solder, too. Well, if I'm pulling out this chip, I might as well, move these other chips around over here, too. How confident are you with your employees every time they crack open a system? And how comfortable are you in this whole upskilling process of being able to take an employee, be able to onboard them, and be able to have them just be able to do the work in a reasonable amount of time? And I think it's one of the curious things to be thinking about with how the economy is now going to be shifting in the United States is that whole question of do we have the processes in place to be able to properly upskill workers? Like, it's interesting. Again, back when I read the business books and all that kind of stuff when I started entrepreneurship, I remember reading that about so many of the fast food restaurants, so many of the businesses that we have nowadays in the United States, and how a lot of employees, again, complain that they're just a cog in their system, right? I'm just a cog in the system, a completely and utterly replaceable cog. And the funny part is they don't realize how much money and how much time and how much energy the corporations took to make it so that you would be such a replaceable cog, right? The idea being is the longer it takes to upskill, the more decision-making processes the employee has, the more likelihood the product that comes out the other side is going to be assed up one way or the other, right? So if you can manage the process down to a microscopic degree and have everything documented out, so if one of your employees falls over from a heart attack, you can simply grab another employee, shove them in the spot, and within a day, they're doing the work as well as a previous employee, right? That's been like the American management way for the past couple of decades. And so one of the questions then becomes is if we require our economy to be run based off of people being of a higher skill set level and being able to have more decision-making processes over what they're doing, if the risk of failure for an employee goes up dramatically, right? So instead of you didn't slot in the RAM stick properly, you melted crap on the motherboard, on the $2,000 motherboard that we can't repair. As you increase that, how well are the companies in our country and the employees going to be able to evolve into that particular world? You know, one thing I think about that, like for you, again, as a decision maker or as a business person, this might be a very good thing. If you can figure out how to do it, you might then be able to make all the money. Again, that's one of the things, like when I started my business in Baltimore. So when I had my consulting business and I had my store in Baltimore, one of the great things about Baltimore, it's absolutely terrific, is do you know they only have a 60% high school graduation rate? Again, which is another time you're like, what the hell's wrong with this guy? Wait for it, though. Wait for it. But think about it, right? Baltimore City has a 60% high school graduation rate, and frankly, most of the people that graduate high school shouldn't graduate high school, right? That literally, there was a lawsuit. I lost track of the lawsuit. There was literally a graduate of a Baltimore City high school that was suing the school system because she came out literally not being able to read. She graduated high school illiterate, but they still graduated her ass. And she's suing the school system because of how ridiculous that is. How can you graduate high school and still be illiterate? Right? But, man, that's horrible. Oh my God, that's horrible. Yeah, that's a real problem. That's real. We should fix that. We should fix that. The government should get on top of it. Federal government, hey, you know, education department should probably solve those kind of problems. Anyways, but here's the thing in Baltimore City. There is actually a lot of money in Baltimore City. Again, there's people from DC, there's people who've done a lot of interesting things. Again, there's a lot of, you know, multi-millionaire African Americans. Again, you think, like the way the progressives push everything, it's like African Americans are either movie stars or athletes or dirt poor. Right? A lot of black folks went out, did business, did engineering, made a lot of money. And here's the interesting thing. They need services. They need services. Nothing worse in the world than making your millions and millions of dollars and then not being able to hire anybody to repair your crap. Right? Wait a minute, I'm a gazillionaire, but nobody's qualified to actually service anything or sell me the stuff that I want. So one of the things that made me successful, right, all the way up into the Great Recession, is I come in, sir, yes, sir, ma'am, yes, ma'am, came from the enterprise world. I come in, again, we have a help desk system, we have systems for doing everything. We go, we clean everything up. Again, we just try to do everything top notch. And think about it. In a city where 60% of people graduate high school, you have a computer company that's willing to come and do things top notch. That's an easy way to make a lot of money, right? Again, for us, it was no joke. Like at that time period, again, we did Mac repairs, not what Lewis does by any stretch of the imagination. We didn't solder or anything, but we did Mac repairs. We literally, so if you know where Baltimore is, we literally have people coming from the Eastern Shore. We had people coming from Northern Virginia, and we had people coming from Pennsylvania. Simply because, again, we repaired, Macs out of warranty. Again, all we were doing was swapping LCD screens or swapping keyboards or that type of thing. But then we were able to do it. And so we actually, again, I talked with my secretary and my assistant. They're like, yeah, we're having somebody come in for an appointment at 3 o'clock or whatever. Like, okay, where are they coming from? Was it Ruxton, Virginia? Like, what? Why are they coming from Virginia? Why are they coming from the Eastern Shore? Oh, they couldn't find anybody else to repair this equipment between here and there. So therefore, they're driving in. Well, there you go. And so I think that's going to be one of the things to ponder, to think about. And again, that's where I talk about like with macro. And I know, like, one of the hard parts when you listen to me, I'll admit it, is I talk about the bad stuff. I talk about the bad stuff. Again, I talk about the Great Recession. I talk about the Great Recession. And I talk about the dot-com bust. And I talk about my wife having cancers. Oh, I talk about all the sad stuff. Again, because weirdly, that's what's interesting to me. Again, I'm a technology professional. Look, I'm an old school technology professional. So we like solving problems, right? And that's the thing. Like when it's a beautiful day here in Asheville, right? When it's a beautiful day outside, and I grab my cup of coffee and I take little Roxy and we go out to the porch and she's on my lap and I sip a cup of coffee and I'm reading my book about whatever. That's gorgeous. That's beautiful. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. But there's nothing really to say. Oh, Eli, what did you do today? I sat on the porch, getting some sun, drinking some coffee, reading a book with Roxy on my lap. Right? There's no deeper thought there. There's no deeper thought. There's nothing for your brain to noodle on. Like, oh, maybe if I sat here instead of I sat there. No, it's just a nice day. It's a beautiful day. When things go well, things go well. What is there to say? Yep. Right? Again, it's like the best stories are the disasters. Failures are the stories you're going to be talking about for your entire life. Lovely, pleasant days you're probably going to forget about by next week, right? But anyways, the point with that is that many times, again, I focus on the bad. Again, we got the tariffs coming. We got the tariffs. We officially have the worst president in American history, who sadly does not realize he is that way. This one thinks he's the next JFK too. All these boomers think they're going to be the next John F. Kennedy. Anyways, but the important thing to understand though is I've also had the good times. Again, when we talk about the macro forces. The macro forces push against you. They also push you ahead. Right? Again, in 2000, again, when I got the job, traveling all over the country as a 24-year-old, I got that because the macro force was all these companies needed technology professionals. There were not nearly enough technology professionals out there. I was willing to do what they needed to do, and therefore I was a 24-year-old with a direct line to the travel department. In macro forces in the 2000s, after the dot-com bust. Again, there's the whole disaster of me getting laid off from a pizza delivery job. Laid off, not fired, laid off. Anyways. But again, I started a consulting company. I started putting up pull tab signs. Anyways, but at that point, people had money. It was a Service Pack 1 era, right? So everybody was getting high-speed internet. Service Pack 1 for XP was not designed for that particular world, that security environment. It was a lot of money, just printing money. Again, literally, my first employee, he was like, oh my God, we printing money. I was like, yes, we are, right? I was able to take off. Again, with YouTube, becoming successful on YouTube. When I was successful on YouTube, not successful anymore. We'll all pretend. These are all vanity metrics. Hey, vanity metrics are still metrics. They're still metrics. But anyways, right? Again, I started doing it back in the old days. I was one of the first people to do a lot of things here on YouTube, and that made me successful. Again, those are the macro forces, and that's the thing to be thinking about. Like when you are in an environment where only 60% of the population graduates high school, at the exact same time Service Pack 1 is being used on home systems that have broadband internet, and people have money to repair these systems, right? That's the macro environment. You can cry about the fact only 60% of the population has graduated high school. You can cry about a lot of things about Baltimore, right? There's a lot of stuff to cry about Baltimore. Or you go out there and hustle, and try to make it better, try to make your life better, and then hire employees, and then pay your taxes, and that kind of thing. And I think that's what I think about, again, with what is currently going on. Is, again, how do you position yourself in this environment, not yesterday's environment, not 2000s environment? How do you position yourself in this particular environment? My God. Oh, 100% tariffs. What the hell? So anyways, This hopefully will be the last of these particular videos. Eli, why are you talking about Trump so much? Oh, because he's trying to destroy my country. Because there's actual practical implications when the President of the United States tries to tank our country. There's logistics and workflow considerations when you have an absolutely insane bat crap president. Oh no, you have I don't care. I don't. You ever get to that tired point? It's kind of that funny thing. It's like with Marvel movies. With Marvel movies, right? Marvel movies were good, and then they were a little weird. You could argue about them, and then they went woke or bad, and people argued more. And now they just come out, and I don't watch them. I don't watch Marvel movies anymore because I just don't care about Marvel movies anymore. I don't know if they're woke or good or bad or whatever else, right? Anyways, that's almost like with the politics with Trump. First you're like, rah, first you're like, eh, and then you're like, rah. And now it's just like, this is just stupid. This is just asinine. You have TDS. Whatever. Fuck off. Anyways. No, I don't have TDS. I have 104% goddamn tariff. Now we're told by the administration, oh, you shouldn't worry about it. What is it? I saw that Benny, is there a guy Benny Hill? Is that a real name? Benny Hill? Anyway, some Trump-loving money guy literally said it doesn't cost you any money to lose money. Right? The indexes, the stock markets are down by 12, 15% over the past couple of days. Worst drop in the stock market in history. And you literally have MAGA pundits coming out saying it doesn't cost you any money to lose money. Oh, God. I miss the politics of the 2000s. Remember when politics at least seemed to make half an ounce of sense? Remember when the buzzwords at least made, like, you're like, yeah! Now you're like, what? It doesn't cost you money to lose money. Hey, being homeless doesn't cost you any money. Hey, look. Yeah, I know you're homeless now. I know you're homeless. But look, it doesn't cost you anything. Look at what you've been saved from. You don't see mortgages cost you money. Rent costs you money. Homeless? Homeless is free. What? Oh God. What is going on? Anyways, some things to think about. You can make money. You can make money in any economy. It's literally how you position yourself. So think about how you position yourself in this economy. Again, like think about that. Like, and again, like from a real estate perspective, I mean, this is horrible, but it's true. You could come up with a hostel. Like I did, I was thinking about that with the economics of hostels years ago, right? I was like, how do hostels make money? So, I backpacked through Europe. So you pay like 20 euros a night to stay in a hostel. And you're like, how does this make money, right? At the time, it cost like $80 a night for a hotel room, or you can get a hostel for $20 a night. Well, here's the thing, right? You pay $80 euros a night for a hotel room, and they make $80. Well, if you have a room and you put 20 bunks in that room and you charge 20 euros per bunk, that means you can make 240 euros per night off of offering cheap beds. So again, like one of the things, I mean, it sounds horrible. One of the things to think about as the economy implodes is if you can get your hands on real estate. Selling bunks for $300 a month might be a way to make a lot of money. Hey, you can't afford a mortgage or rent anymore, but you can afford a bunk. You shove 10 bunks into one apartment, You're now making $3,000 a month of a $1,500 a month apartment. There's always ways to make money, regardless of the economy that we're in. Sad but true. But anyways, all of this is kind of sad at this point. So anywho, how do you like the ring light? This is the first video I've done with the ring light. I think that brings out, I don't know, my complexion. Again, I'm using this just so you know. So I do think we're going to be doing the digital nomad thing. Again, you know, practical. I talk about all this stuff. And again, a lot of the pundits out there, a lot of the commentary people out there, they just say whatever. They just say whatever because, you know, it's the clickbait of the day. But again, like we are literally thinking about the nomad thing because I don't trust what's going to happen in Miami, right? So my wife and I, Asheville's been Asheville. I don't know. Asheville's a lovely place. If you want to retire, come to Asheville. Otherwise, prices have gone through the roof. The economy is crap. We got a biblical flood. All kinds of problems here. Anyways, so we were looking at going to Miami. Now we spent a month in South Beach. So just a little while ago, we were south of Fifth. Oh, right. We rented we did an Airbnb for a month south of Fifth and South Beach, and I ran around. Right. So I went to lots of different meetups, tech meetups there in Miami. Was highly impressed with the tech meetups there. We liked Miami Beach. We liked a lot of stuff about Miami Beach. We looked at some places to rent there, and we were pretty solid. We were pretty solid on the idea of moving to South Beach. The issue is that while we're at South Beach, you could already see the economic cracks. Right, so again, this is before the tariff. This is before this level of tariffs. Right, this had nothing to do with tariffs. Probably had very little to do with Trump. Right, again, the economy in the United States has not been sane since 2006, 2007. Again, when we talk about the economy, that's one of the problems. You talk about the economy now, and it gets into this whole Trump thing. Again, Trump is doing what Trump's doing. But the problem with the economy is George Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden. Right, our last number of presidents and administrations have just made a disaster of the economy. And so anyways, the interesting thing about going to South Beach is you could already see the cracks in the economy there. So you walk down the road, so it's a very tourist-based economy, and you walk down the roads, and it's amazing how many storefronts are empty. Like there's a main tourist thoroughfare called Lincoln Road. Really great. So walking thoroughfare, you go there, there's Starbucks and there's Lululemons and there's all kinds of stuff there. Anyway, there's amazing how many of those stores are empty. And so we've been going to South Beach for a long time. I don't know, we've been together almost 20 years now. So we've been going there for like 18 years. And that's something you notice with the economy. Like sometimes you go to Lincoln Road, every storefront has a store. Sometimes you go to Lincoln Road, half the storefronts are empty. And again, over 20 years, you kind of see the... Anyways, when we went there were a lot of storefronts in Lincoln Road that were already empty. And then as you start exploring more and more of Miami Beach and the retail areas, you realize there's a lot of empty storefronts in Miami Beach, South Beach. And you start looking at things and you start realizing, again, even before the tariffs, that there are real cracks in the economy there. And again, that's one of the things you have to think about, though. Everything in life is a bet. Everything in life is a bet. It's a risk. There is no right answer. You do what you do and see what happens. Anyways, and so with that, I was like, look, there's cracks here. There's obviously issues here, but one of the things is once Trump starts putting all these tariffs, you already see the cracks. You already see the foundations are cracking. And then you add all of these economic issues, and especially with somebody like someplace like Miami, they have so many international travelers. So the issues with international, visitors having problems with the border and all that is a big deal. and you start adding all this together, it's like when you already see those many cracks there, and then you add the pressure that's currently being put on. Do you trust that? When does the level of risk increase to the degree you're just simply not comfortable with it? And that's my thought with looking at Miami right now. And that's one of the reasons we're thinking about doing the whole digital nomad thing for a while. Again, we did it back in 2015 before nomading was cool. We got in a travel trailer. We traveled all around the country for a year. So we're thinking about doing that with Airbnbs. You go here, you go there. This city erupts in riots. You just go to another city. Hey, look, I'm realistic, dude. Realistic. You want other people, you want somebody to moralize and sermonize. That's fine. Go watch somebody else. Me? It's like, oh, look, hey dear. Yeah, they're lighting the business district on fire. Oh my God, what should we do? I think we're gonna pack, and I booked us another Airbnb about 1,000 miles away. Why don't we come back in a year and a half and see how it all worked out? Anyways, but again, it's one of our actual considerations. And so again, it's that curious thing for you to be thinking about. Anyways, that's all I've got. Let me know how you like the ring light. Let me know how you like the new microphone. Let me know how you like the new economy. See y'all later.